Sounds Good is sponsored by Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it is the easiest way to make a podcast. When we were first getting started, getting ready to launch Sounds Good in 2015, making a podcast was hard. But now, thanks to Anchor, making a podcast is not only easy, it is fun. Anchor's creation tools allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and basically everywhere else. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Plus, now you can add any song from Spotify directly to your episodes. Even if you're an OG podcast like ours, you can record and produce your show like you always have, but use Anchor as your host. You'll save money, have a superior hosting experience, and get advanced analytics. Anchor has everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. According to a 2019 report from the White House, more than 500,000 people experience homelessness on any single night in the United States. About 65% of those people are in homeless shelters, and the other 35% sleep in places not intended for human habitation, like sidewalks, parks, cars, or abandoned buildings. It's a serious problem, compounded by the pandemic, and a problem that today's guest is working to solve. I'm Branden Harvey. This is Sounds Good. Today I'm talking with Terence Lester, a speaker, activist, author, and thought leader in the realm of systemic poverty. He's known for nationwide campaigns that bring awareness to issues surrounding homelessness, poverty, and economic inequality. He combines storytelling and digital media to illustrate social justice issues and practical solutions, and he's been featured on CNN, Good Morning America, USA Today, NBC, and more. In 2013, he founded the nonprofit Love Beyond Walls, which helps people experiencing homelessness and poverty rebuild their lives. And in 2019, he launched the Dignity Museum out of a shipping container. It's the first museum in the US that represents homelessness. He holds 4 degrees and has written 4 books. And I'm so excited and honored to welcome our guest, Terence Lester, as the first guest of the new season of Sounds Good. Terence, I believe you founded Love Beyond Walls in 2013. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. One of the very first campaigns that I actually launched in founding the organization is my family actually gave me permission to live as a person experiencing homelessness underneath a bridge in the heart of the city of Atlanta for a little over a week.
What was the catalyst behind that? You know, that's a bold choice. That's a big thing for your family to encourage you to do. Where did that come from, and how did Love Beyond Walls get its start?
Yeah, I think one of the sparks was this huge gap in knowledge when it came to the issue of homelessness. There were times when I would be out literally walking with my friends and have them make very vulgar and demeaning statements about people that we pass living on the streets. And little did they know that I actually experienced homelessness as a teenager myself. And I felt very offended, but not in the way that where I wanted to, retaliate, but in a way that I wanted to model what it really meant to love those who are invisible, but also use it as a way to educate those about the realities of what people suffer through every single day. I launched Love Beyond Walls and co-founded it with my wife. And one of the driving motivations was to advocate on behalf of people whose voices were silenced, but also to shift the narratives that persist in a false manner about those who are poor.
And you've done such an incredible job of this. And in the years since you founded Love Beyond Walls, you've met all kinds of needs of people experiencing homelessness and help change the narrative around homelessness for the people who have seen your work. I know that you have a mobile makeover bus that provides haircuts and hygiene. You have a laundromat. You have a medical clinic and a counseling center. You even created a museum called the Dignity Museum, which is a museum built in a shipping container that allows visitors to confront their ideas of homelessness and what it takes to escape it. And then I also know that, on top of all of these things that you're doing, everything changed with COVID this year. What was the moment that you knew that you needed to pivot your response because of COVID?
Yeah, I remember the moment when I knew I had to pivot. There was a guy named Dimitri that walked into our center in the city of Atlanta, and he had tears in his eyes. He basically was telling us that he was fearing for his life because he was scared that he would contract COVID-19. And his words went something like this: I'm afraid that I'll contract this virus because I have nowhere to wash my hands. It was at that moment that I realized that, businesses and, companies and things would literally be shutting down, and we would have to literally physically distance ourselves from the community that we love so much. But one thing we knew was true is that there were a population of people out there who wouldn't have access to running water and sanitation and some of the things that the CDC was communicating to the public of how to protect yourself against the spread and contraction of COVID-19. And with that information and the story of many of our community members, we were inspired to pivot in a way where we could still service this unseen population, but use it as a way to remind them that they too matter and they are worth loving.
You use this phrase, unseen population, and I think it's correct that this is a community that's going under noticed, especially in the midst of this pandemic. You've got leaders rightfully telling people, hey, it's important that you're washing your hands. It's important that you're, socially distancing. But these are things that are not possible for entire communities in our cities. What are some of the other unique challenges that people experiencing homelessness are facing in the midst of COVID?
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, we heard tons and tons of complaints about people having to shelter in place and even physically distance themselves from one another just to stay safe. And this other phrase of, wear your mask, protect yourself, and also protect the people that you're around if you happen to come in close proximity with other people. But there's still this population of people, like you were saying, that are unseen. I mean, there was no opportunity to shelter in place during the pandemic for people experiencing homelessness when everything was shut down. And even now, it's hard for people experiencing homelessness to find real rest. I mean, think about it. People are sleeping underneath bridges in the midst of compounded germs, sometimes in close quarters with one another. There are shelters all around the country that are only allowing certain amount of people into these shelters, and other people are being turned away. You think about access to testing. That was a huge issue and is still a huge issue. Who's being tested and who's not being tested? Who has access to tests and who doesn't have access to testing? Well, if you're experiencing homelessness, where do you go to get tested? There was a testing shortage, and still people are still like upset and complaining about physically distancing themselves from one another. But think about people experiencing homelessness. They've been put out of restaurants for asking for water, or put out of public spaces for trying to use the restroom, told to leave parks, and you can't stand in certain environments. Or in certain cities right now, you can be cited and fined if you share food with people experiencing homelessness. And this was long before the pandemic. And so I think one of the issues or the leading issue that people experiencing homelessness are facing is this issue of social distancing. I don't even like the term because social distancing speaks to social isolation. What we're
Mm.
doing is staying physically distant from one another to protect ourselves. But people experiencing homelessness have been dealing with social distancing long before the pandemic. And right now, I believe this population of people more than ever needs those vital relationships to remind them that they are welcome, that they belong, address or not, and that there is a community of people that are on their side, creating opportunities for them to move forward in life.
What's incredible is that you are helping solve the problem of the inhumanity in the way that people are treated. And one of the key things that you are working to create a solution to is that hand washing issue that you're talking about, this idea of sanitation that I think most of us take for granted. I come in from walking my dog and I wash my hands for 20 seconds and I'm almost annoyed to be doing it. I take it for granted that much. You came up with a solution for people who are experiencing homelessness. It's called Love Sinks In. Tell me a little bit more about creating that.
So I created Love Sinks in response to the lack of sanitation for people experiencing homelessness. We kept hearing, and we still hear even to this day, these messages from the television or from media outlets to wash your hands. Make sure you are constantly washing your hands for 20 seconds, etc. Well, in thinking about public health, how can you demand a population of people to do something to protect themselves and not furnish them with the resources to actually perform those behaviors? And so it was hard for people actually experiencing homelessness to perform these behaviors. And they were one of the most vulnerable populations out there. I mean, no access to running water, nowhere to wash their hands, oftentimes living in areas with higher chances to spread germs. They're living with pre existing conditions, and it's hard to even maintain sanitation while you're living on the streets. And so I started to think about what could we do to actually make sanitation portable. Our organization has used RVs and camping units in the past to temporarily house people. And I remember back in those days when, we would have to have a portable cooking mechanism or a porta potty and a portable hand washing station. And in reflecting on the usage of something that families oftentimes use for leisure, a light bulb went off. What if we repurpose this feature of an RV and use it as a way to transport sanitation to this population of people that are forgotten in many ways? And so I started doing research and found out a way we could start assembling, these RV parts to create a portable hand washing station. Before you know it, I had one of my friends, Lecrae, donating the first 15. And I remember us just wanting to set up these 15 sinks around the city of Atlanta just to give people in the city access to this soap and water, this basic necessity that everyone should have a right to. And before you know it, it was spreading like wildfire. And to date, 6 months later, we're in 45 cities in 3 countries.
Wow.
Yeah.
How many hand washing stations are out there?
We are over 1,000 right now.
Wow. That's incredible. And tell me about what has the impact been for communities? What has the impact been for people experiencing homelessness?
You think about it, it's been unreal the types of responses that we've gotten. I mean, you just mentioned sometimes you can be a little perturbed about washing your hands after you walk the dog, right? Very impactful story. I remember early on when we were putting out these portable hand washing stations in a local park here in the city. And these guys were forming this line because they were really excited to wash their hands. And people are washing their hands, and it's this one guy, he gets up And over to the right of us, an organization was out sharing food, and everybody started to run to form a line to get food because people said, we haven't eaten in a week. All of the commuters are sheltering in place, etc. And this guy looks at me and he says, "Nope, I'm not going to run to get in line because I'm glad I can wash my hands before I eat." And it was in that moment I go, wow, something as simple as giving dignity through washing of hands before a person eats. I even get chills now just thinking about it, man, because you think about right now we have over 100 sinks in the Navajo Nation, this indigenous reservation that doesn't have running water at all. We're working with local leaders on the ground there that literally have to drive an hour and a half away to get access to running water, and how cases of COVID is steadily rising there. And they're using these portable hand washing stations in grocery stores, in chapter houses, in people's homes where they gather just to maintain this sanitation. And until this Love Sinks In campaign, it's a cool name, but there's a deeper meaning that, yeah, we're installing sinks in certain communities, but what we're really trying to communicate is love does really need to sink in a way where we are paying attention to the most vulnerable of our society.
Wow, this conversation is just making me feel so hopeful. There are people dedicating their entire lives to solve the problem of homelessness and inequality, all to make the future better for others. I hope this conversation is making you feel more hopeful too, and I hope that you'll channel that into making a difference in your own community. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I'm asking Terence about 3 common misconceptions around people who are experiencing homelessness and how we can all work together to help overcome them, especially in the era of COVID-19. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Is there something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? I know for me, I hit a wall in June. The pandemic was causing a lot of stress for me, and I knew that I needed to talk to someone. So I signed up for BetterHelp. No joke. And it has been so helpful to have a professional to talk to virtually. Here's how it works. BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist, and you can start communicating in under 48 hours. To be honest, taking the survey is actually kind of fun. I don't know why, but after you're matched, you can log into your account anytime and send a message to your counselor. You'll get timely and thoughtful responses. Plus, you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions. I personally switch back and forth between doing video sessions at my house and doing phone sessions while walking around my neighborhood. BetterHelp is more affordable than traditional offline counseling, and financial aid is available. BetterHelp wants you to start living a happier life today. Visit betterhelp.com/good and join over 1 million people who have taken charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. And BetterHelp is offering a special offer for Sounds Good listeners to get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/good. That's betterhelp.com/good. One more time, that is betterhelp.com/good. This podcast is sponsored by Libro FM. Libro FM is the first and only company that lets you purchase audiobooks directly from your favorite local bookstore. You can pick from more than 150,000 audiobooks, including bestsellers and recommendations from booksellers. I have been using Libro FM for months now, before they were even a sponsor, and I just finished listening to Barack Obama's thoughtful new book, as well as Samantha Irby's hilarious book, Wow, No Thank You. And for both purchases, my cute little bookstore, Broadway Books, was supported. With Libro FM, you get these same audiobooks at the same price as the largest audiobook company out there. You know the name. But you'll be a part of a different story, one that supports community. If you're new to audiobooks, they're the perfect way to get more books into your busy life. Listen while doing chores, walking the dog, or just relaxing at home. All you need is a smartphone and the free Libro FM app. As a special offer for Sounds Good listeners, get 2 audiobooks for the price of one, only $14.99, with your first month of membership with the code GOOD. All you have to do is visit the website libro.fm, that's libro.fm, and use the promo code GOOD to get started with 2 free audiobooks and to help support this show. All right, Terence, I know that you've got 3 key myths, 3 key misconceptions that people have of people experiencing homelessness, and then what's ultimately like a quick back check on each of them. And so can you tell me the first misconception that people have of people experiencing homelessness?
Yeah, I think one of the first myths is that people experiencing homelessness are lazy and actually don't want to work.
And what are the implications of that misconception?
The fact is this, that many people experiencing homelessness actually have jobs, and there are a lot of people living on the streets actually working tons of hours each week, but maybe they don't make enough to afford stable housing. And then there are others who want to work but can't get jobs without a valid ID. Maybe they've lost this vital piece of information, and guess what? You need ID to get ID, and you need identification to even get housing or to be able to cash a check and open a bank account and some of those things.
What is the second misconception that people have about people experiencing homelessness?
Yeah, I think the second myth is that most people experiencing homelessness are addicted to drugs and alcohol. And that myth is just not true. The reality is this, and there's a chart and a graph that actually has statistics about the triggers of homelessness. And believe it or not, drug addiction is one of the least likely things to cause someone to experience homelessness. As a matter of fact, it makes up 16% of this entire pie. One of the leading causes right now for the experience of homelessness is job loss. I mean, I think everybody can relate to that with COVID-19. There are millions of people right now who are unemployed or even furloughed because of this tense time that we're in.
That's unbelievable. And also completely believable that, just some people don't have that same safety net when they lose their jobs. And because of that, they're going to end up experiencing homelessness. And what's the third misconception that people have?
Yeah, one of the last myths about people experiencing homelessness that I'll mention is that all people experiencing homelessness are mentally ill. And I think we have to move away from that language, because the fact is this: mental illness is experienced by those who have and do not have homes. I think sometimes we use this as a crutch or an excuse not to love people well. And we view them through these jaded lenses to excuse ourselves from being proximate to people. And the reality is this: if we're going to really think about solving the issue of the experience of homelessness for people, then we've got to reimagine how we view people.
Man, this is really, really helpful to better understand some of these things that we may have misbelieved. We may believe, but we're incorrect. And the wonderful thing is, when we know better, we can do better. And so with all of this in mind, as we're kind of reframing the way that we see those in our communities who are experiencing homelessness, what's a practical way that we can take action and help better support those in our communities who are having this experience?
One of the ways is, I mean, think about it right now, people are still having to maintain proper sanitation because we're still in a pandemic. And the reality is that people experiencing homelessness are still in need of supplies to actually sanitize themselves during this pandemic. Think about if you just decided to gather a bunch of hand sanitizer and leave it in a place where you know people experiencing homelessness may frequent. Think about volunteering your time with an organization. Like right now, our organization also supports families who are food insecure during this pandemic. And we have volunteers that never come and deliver any food items. They are picking up the phone and checking on our community members who may be at the house, who are stranded and they live in food deserts. I mean, just think about the importance of a phone call right now to remind people that they are worthy, and that they are being thought about. Another thing, which is very simple, thinking of ways to literally engage in conversations with individuals where you could go beyond the surface. One of the things that people like to do is put labels on people. You know, earlier today I was drinking one of my favorite drinks and it has a pretty fancy label, but the label means nothing because what really matters is the content that's on the inside of the can that holds it, really. And I think people often equate, worth and value based upon these exterior things and forget that the real substance of a person is on the inside. And that's what we like to do in our approach with Love Beyond Walls. We don't look at labels, whether people have pretty labels or damaged labels. We're not about that. We're about what's on the inside of the person. And I think that within itself validates and affirms the dignity of someone when you just look someone in the eyes, get to know their story, and forge those meaningful relationships.
Man, that is so actionable and doable by all of us. And I'm just so grateful for the work that you do and for the inspiration that you are sharing with all of us. Man, thank you so much for everything.
Thank you. Grateful to be here with you.
That's Terence Lester, the founder of Love Beyond Walls. He's the author of the book, I See You, and the host of the podcast, Narrative Shift. If you have the means, please make a donation to the incredible work being done by Love Beyond Walls at lovebeyondwalls.org. This podcast was created by Good. At Good, we help you feel more hopeful and do more good. You can find more good news and ways to make a difference in our weekly email newsletter, our beautiful print good newspaper, or online at goodgoodgood.co. This episode was created by Kaylee Thompson, Megan Burns, Chad Michael Snavely, and me, Branden Harvey. Because this show is new, please do us a favor by leaving a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss a single episode. And please, when you find an episode that you love, please share it on Instagram so we can repost you. That is a wrap for this week's episode. Go out and do some good this week, and we'll be back next week with more good news and good action. Sound good?